we have hashed and rehashed how it got to this point. Let's talk about how it gets beyond this point, because that's what Greg's column was about, moving forward. How do we get beyond this point with North Carolina football? How does the noise quiet, if possible? I don't think it's possible, but how does the noise dim a little bit? And your take on how this improves somewhat to at least get through the season and then reinvest or reassess and see what's going on.
Well, I mean, I think the first thing is you have to make sure that you win your locker room back. You have to earn the trust of your players. You have to get those guys on board to where your team is playing hard over the course of the rest of the season. And I will say, I don't think Michael Lombardi's letter that was sent out to a number of supporters and all of that, I don't think that was very helpful for, retaining the trust of your team. When you're basically saying, well, look, we know we're not very talented. We filled out our roster with a bunch of duds, and we're going to be recruiting some better players out of high school. You just got to be patient with us. Well, this year, well, it is what it is. But in the future, if you're on that team, what are you hearing? Yeah, this is awkward. That's right. This is the guy who's starting to wax poetic about his second wife while he's still married to the first one, right? I mean, that's an awkward conversation. So the first thing you have to do is you have to repair some of that. I don't know how much that impacted things, but I would say that that's probably not exactly that probably was not taken very kindly by at least some of those players. But the bottom line is you've got to, as Belichick and this assistant staff, you have to persuade them that you're not throwing them under the bus, and that you're still ride or die with those guys, and that if we just keep doing the right thing, keep chopping wood, then we're gonna eventually break through and start to see the good positive results. What do? You focus on process. Guys, you have to trust the process. And by that I don't mean trust that we're gonna have better players than you next year. See, that's the hard part, is that they just had somebody who was saying you got to trust the process, as in like we'll get better players eventually. Well, now what you have to do is you have to get these guys to buy in. Some of that is going to be finding some different things than what you've been doing. Some of that is getting guys is holding every player accountable to what you're demanding from every other player, and that's on the field, off the field, every other aspect of that. That if you're not giving the kind of effort that is expected, then you're going to be standing next to coach. At a certain point, there has to be a combination of accountability and earned trust. And those two things tend to go together. And the players have to believe that you're in this, not just for yourself, but for them, and and that you are invested in their success, and that you're in this, that we're all in this together. Once you get that, then you can go forward. And yes, it will help when they get better talent on campus. I mean, if they're able to do that, yeah, stuff can flip really quickly. I mean, we've seen multiple examples of that. And they're going to have to do a lot better in figuring that out. Fortunately, they do have Michael Lombardi, who has, as he's explained, expertise in identifying all the various aspects of character to guarantee that you are getting the kind of player who's going to fit your program and is going to be a hard worker and all of that, so that you can pretty well guarantee that you're not going to get any busts. So for next year, I think they're obviously set in that department. But moving forward to set that up, you still have to set your foundation with guys this year buying in and preparing.
Greg, how do you come back from a letter like that, where you basically, for the average person that works in an office, you are you working, you bust your tail all day, you walk into the conference room and you overhear one of your supervisors telling everybody that you suck and we got to get better players, that's what it said, right? I mean, that's how I took it. How do you come back from that with the current people? I mean, can you get that trust back? Is it possible?
Tommy, my wife has a good friend who's, I guess she's 12 or 15 years into her first marriage, and she's constantly talking about her second husband's going to do this and her second husband's going to do this. So it's kind of got that feel to it. Look, I think we have to be honest about the situation. And I think we have to recognize that a lot of evaluation mistakes were made. And that falls on Lombardi. By everything that I've seen, he is the highest paid general manager in college football.
By far.
So pay is commensurate with production, right? There's no reason for North Carolina not to have a top 25 roster right now. So that was a failure this offseason. And what that means is that next year has got to be a home run. The challenging part of it is they had several years of runway before the season started. I think that runway has gotten very short. And what that means is you've got to nail it in evaluation and in your negotiating ability to be able to bring kids in this offseason, which puts the current roster in dire shape. And I think really what you're going to see is, the coaching staff for this year has to do a better job of connecting with the team and trying to win them back. But at the same time, I mean, this is a opportunity for these players and a necessity for them, for those who want to stay, to prove that they're capable of playing at a better level and that they belong on this roster next year. Because there's going to be a massive amount of turnover. I don't see how there can't be if North Carolina needs to be a legitimate top 25 team next year. And Lombardi's not necessarily wrong in the idea that you can bring in 40 kids as high school players, because if this thing's going to last more than 2 years, you do need to have that foundation through the high school ranks. And it's beneficial because now with the rev share and the house settlement, there's 105 scholarships. So even if you bring in 40 freshmen, you've still got 60 or so scholarships that you can use both for retention and for going out into the portal and getting new guys. But clearly it wasn't worded, maybe the way it should have been, especially with regard to the current players. But I think the players understand that this has been a disaster thus far. And certainly it falls all on the coaching staff. But the coaching staff is responsible for putting the players on the field that can produce. And we haven't seen a lot of production yet. And it's just going to be one of those things that the next 7 games is going to be about proving, hey, I can actually do this. I can actually be a key part of this team and actually maybe be on the 2 deep next year. That's what these kids have to show. And I think what you will also see is that in the coming weeks, more kids, younger kids, are going to start playing for that very reason, so the coaching staff can see, all right, well, this guy has a chance. This guy has a chance. I don't think this guy's going to be able to play for us, so he's going to have to go somewhere else.
Jason, on that side, and I don't want to interrupt your chat dialogue that you got going on, but on that aspect of it, playing younger guys, specifically the quarterbacks, I mean, how is that handled here? Another bye week until Cal. You obviously got a quarterback from North Carolina that could be a pillar of the program. You trotted him out on the halftime at a basketball game as the guy you're first recruiting on. We haven't seen him at all. Ready or not, here they come. How do you handle the roster going forward, as Greg says, to put guys in position to succeed and want to be there and have an opportunity to be there and produce for this team? How does that work, given to this point there have not been any changes other than Armando Hawkins not there currently?
I mean, the hard part is that, in terms of roster changes, you can't bring anybody else in that's new, right? The players you have now are the players you're going to have. I mean, that's one of the differences with the NFL, right? I mean, you just had a trade where the Bengals have struggled mightily at quarterback, and they made a trade, and they got Joe Flacco coming in to be the solution. Now, you may not think Joe Flacco is exactly going to be a great solution for him at 40 years old, and you may think that's elder abuse to put him behind that offensive line. Sure. But at the same point, you can go out and do that. In college, you have to figure out these are the guys we've got, and you've got to figure out how to put those guys into positions that are better suited for them.
But my point
And
is, if they're sitting in the stands, which is unbelievable, that's a whole nother topic. I practice all week and I can't dress for a home football game. That's another.
yeah,
That's an issue. But anyway,
they did say it was going to be the 33rd NFL team, and NFL teams only dress so many guys, and then you got the guys in the practice squad who never dress out on the sideline.
yeah, and
I
that's
mean,
why the locker room's in turmoil. Partly.
Again, this is the be careful what you wish for on that. If you want to be the 33rd NFL team, then there are certain ways that things are done that are not the way that things are done in college. Now, in my view, if this is one of those places where it would behoove Belichick and his regime to be a little more college. And actually, I think on a lot of things right now, part of the solution is to just be more college. And you mentioned earlier the kind of the arrogance that has kind of characterized what has happened to this point. And there has been some. And look, I'm familiar enough with arrogance. I look in the mirror every morning to be able to diagnose some of that, right? So
no lies, we're told, folks.
yeah. So I mean, let's be honest about things, right? But the truth is that the only way to get better on this is to recognize, like, oh, I overestimated this. I overstepped my bounds on this, or I thought that I could walk in and do this, and that's not true. Once you've been humbled, then the next step is, okay, what are the things that I need to be doing differently? And in this case, again, we've talked about this a little bit. I don't want to beat this horse to death. I mean, I've got, again, lots of dead horses buried that have been beaten pretty badly in the past. But we've talked about how they came in believing that they were playing chess and everybody else in college has just been playing checkers. And they're going to be able to kind of come in with their NFL expertise and just, obviously, we're better than everybody at this level, so we'll be able to win. It's sort of like, what was it, the year that Sean Payton in the NFL was coaching his, he took a year off and he was coaching his kids' Pop Warner team, right? He's out there, and he was talking about how difficult it was in certain aspects, because suddenly he's having to try to scheme up against like the single wing and things that he hasn't seen it in 30 years. And he's like, it was actually really challenging because I'm dealing with personnel stuff that I didn't have to deal with in the NFL. And I'm, facing schemes that nobody runs, and I'm having to, kind of go back and study again on some things. That's what happens when, ball is ball, but each level has its own things that make it different and make it difficult. And what's happened, I think, is Belichick and company have come in and they've had to learn on the fly. And this is what everybody who thought about this at the beginning, we all said this on our initial response podcasts, our initial reaction podcasts of like, well, I mean, none of these guys have coached in college before. I mean, there's bound to be some learning curve here, and it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, it could go badly, but, the guys obviously had a ton of success in the NFL, and the chances are that, he's going to figure it out. He's not, he's no fool. Well, it's gone rough. The next step, though, is, okay, you figure out, okay, what are the college things that we're not doing that everybody else has been doing for a long time, that we kind of threw that out with we threw that baby out with the bathwater. What is it that we're not doing now that we need to actually do, that it turns out everybody else was doing it because it was actually smart when you're dealing with this level of the game, with this level of player and so on? They've got to figure some of that out. The hard part is they don't have very many voices on staff that can really provide some of that wisdom. They've got a few. I mean, Bob Diaco's coached a lot at this level. You've got Friend has coached a lot at this level. You've got some guys who, hopefully they can contribute with their voices on this of, maybe we should think about this. But I mean, I think there's a process of learning that has to happen the remainder of the year as to how they're going to, again, earn that trust back, figure out how they're going to handle different things at that level and go on. And the good thing is that human beings, we are infinitely adaptable creatures. And, the brain continues to develop, as long as we're alive, as long as we're open to providing it new challenges. So, he may be 73 years old, but he can still learn new tricks if he's open to it.
Tommy, I think Jason's exactly right there. And nobody wants to hear this, and I understand it. But the rest of this season, getting through Thanksgiving, is about trying to figure out where all these different aspects went wrong and trying to gain some level of traction. In addition to getting ahead of the evaluation game with the portal and solidifying your high school recruiting class. Those are your three key things. Everybody's worried about the schedule. I hate to tell you, this team's not going to a bowl game. So it really doesn't matter if you're 4-8 or 2-10. But learn from the mistakes, which they're abundant. But figure out what maybe can work. Figure out which of these kids listen to you and actually can appreciate what you're bringing. That's completely different than what any other kid in this circumstance maybe has. And that's not a critique of the players. I mean, that responsibility falls on the coaching staff. But some kids may be more geared to that approach than many of the others. And you've got to figure out what pieces are there that work for what you're wanting to do. And I get it. It's not fair to the players, but it is what it is. And that's really all they can do because this has been such a mess. They've got to find some things where they can get a foothold and build from that and build rapidly because this has got to get turned around very quickly as you get late in the season into the recruiting period.